Mark Waid, writer of Superman Birthright, and you're listening to Krypton Report.
Up in the sky, look!
It's a bird!
It's a plane! It's the Krypton Report!
Welcome to the Krypton Report podcast, presented by the Southgate Media Group.
The All Things Kryptonian podcast, including Superman and Supergirl.
We discuss games, movies, cartoons, TV shows, and comics.
Krypton Report Pod can be found on Facebook, Twitter, Skype, YouTube, and Instagram.
And if you want to drop us a line, send it to kryptonreportpod@gmail.com.
We are on Patreon under Southgate Media Group.
And our official merch page is tpublic.com. Search Krypton Report.
Now on with the show.
25 years ago, on a Sunday night, the world was introduced to the new Superman. Ladies and gentlemen, the Krypton Report presents our look back at Lois and Clark, the new adventures of Superman. It's been 25 years, and I'm only in my early 30s. So, wow. And to help me discuss this is the one, the only, that caped crime fighter in super blue, Mr. James Cole. Welcome, James.
Hey, Tyler. Thanks for having me. How's it going?
It's going good. So tonight we are recording. We wanted to have this out before, but just life and our special episode that's coming up soon that may be out before this one. We're not sure. And if you're listening to this one and you're not sure what it was a special guest. You'll figure it out. But 25 years ago, Lois and Clark premiered on ABC on Sunday night. Were you there, James? Were you watching?
I was watching.
I was too.
I don't remember a whole lot about the night, but I was watching.
This is what I remember. I remember it was always like kind of a conflict in my house because my mom wanted to watch Sequest DSV, which was a cool show. And it came on at the same time as Lois and Clark. And of course, I wanted to watch Superman. So there was always, this conflict of butting heads of who is going to control the TV. Lois and Clark was one of those shows as a child like I watched. You miss an episode here and there just because you do your stuff with family and but I remember watching it every Sunday, that I could. And I was thinking about this with the show, and we're gonna take a trip back. So just to recap, okay? 1987, Canon Films had released Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, and there's a really weird rights battle. With where the Salkinds had the rights to Superman. They sold the rights or part of the rights to Canon. That's why Canon did Superman 4. And then 88, we have Superboy, the TV series, which ran from 88 to 92. It ran for 100 episodes and 4 seasons. And that was produced by the Salkinds. And there's if you look at the history of the character of Superboy and where it falls in like the mantle of everything, it's really weird because there was battles that even Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster had in court about the character of Superboy being different than the character of Superman, even though the Superboy I'm referencing is the younger Clark Kent. And the Superboy TV series was basically like Superman, just they called him Superboy because they weren't able to do Superman. I don't know. I didn't look enough into it, but he was in college. It's not much of a boy when you're in college, okay? I say all that because then in 89, you have Batman come out. And this is when Warner Brothers is starting to get their they acquire DC and all that in this time period. And they're getting their stuff together. They're getting everything back in-house, and in control. So I didn't think about this at the time, but Lois and Clark is the first kind of Warner Brothers, we own the characters, Superman. And we also have the we're looking at 1987, the John Byrne reboot, Man of Steel in the comics, which means that Superboy the TV show is existing in a time where that character no longer exists in comics continuity. So 92, Superboy gets canceled, and mainly I think it's because the rights issue. Like, Warner Brothers has the rights owning DC, so they're putting out now their own product, and that's when we get Lois and Clark. Which, first of all, the title itself jumps out at you. Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. And this is the first, version of Clark Kent based on that John Byrne Man of Steel reboot. We have, John Shea as Lex Luthor as the first post-crisis Lex Luthor. The billionaire scientist person.
Okay.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah, so there's a lot, if you think about it, you break down for a minute, there's a lot in this show just right there that really puts it up on this is the first proper Superman show to come to television since The Adventures of Superman in the 50s with our good pal George.
Wow, that's a pretty large gap there.
It is. It's one of those things you don't think about. And I also want to throw out that we also had in 1990, from 90 to 91, CBS had The Flash. So another DC property that was trying to make it on television. So that kind of sets the stage of where we are at this time. We just had the death of Superman, the return of Superman, and then 93 Lois and Clark hits. So we're gonna talk now. The pilot episode, I don't know all about TV production, but I do know things. And in the 90s, TV was shot on tape. So there's a lower grade quality for an easier way to shoot television. And this pilot was actually shot on film, 35 millimeter film.
Oh, that's excellent.
It is. And I was thinking about this as this is me speculating, but looking at it, I'm wondering if they shot this pilot, because the pilot was a 2-hour, series premiere. I think it was 93 minutes or something like that was the actual pilot episode. If it hadn't gone to series, if it just would have been a made-for-TV Superman movie. Because they invested the money in it. There are shots in there where you can tell they shot out on location, not in the back lot. There's definitely more quality to the filming. And it has more of a 90s TV movie feel than a lot of pilots and stuff did at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the background of where we're going with this. So we're gonna talk first. We'll crack open. We'll kind of work backwards here. We have Michael Landis as Jimmy Olsen, which he does a great job. But he gets one season, and then he's gone. But he does a very job. He's a little bit more of an older, mature Jimmy, but it seems like he's maybe 5, maybe 6 years kind of younger than Clark, which is fine. I'm cool with Jimmy and Clark being a little bit closer in age, more like brothers. There's an age difference, but nothing that's extreme. And so, which Jimmy did you prefer in the series?
Well, I enjoyed the guy who played Jimmy in the first season. I enjoyed him really well. They carried over some character traits for the other guy. What was his name?
The second actor?
Yeah.
Justin
I
Whalen.
used to know. Yes, Justin Whalen. That's it. I mean, they both brought some qualities. He got to play Jimmy a little while longer. I would have been fine if the first guy who played Jimmy stayed on.
I felt bad for him because they're like, yeah, you look more like Clark's younger brother, so you can't be Jimmy. And I'm like, man, like no one thought of that when they were in the casting process.
Right.
And so we got our Jimmy Olsen, and we have where's the actress's name? I have it written down, but we are introduced to a very 90s style Cat Grant. Very oversexed Cat Grant. Like nowadays kind of like uncomfortable. Like yuck, Cat Grant. Like you're trying too hard, lady. Tracy Scoggins. We also meet Lucy Lane, who I do not remember how much she shows up in this series, but she's in the pilot.
I only remember her from the pilot.
Yeah, I just watched this season. I watched seasons 3, 4, and half of 2 recently. It's been a while since I've watched 1 and it's completely, so I could be missing some things. Now, what are your thoughts on Lane Smith's Perry White?
Well, he's the Perry White that I grew up with. I mean, he got to play him the longest. Perry White, since even back in the movies, he was only in and out when they were in the office. In this show, he's a main character. Seeing as the show is titled Lois and Clark, it's actually about Lois and Clark inside of the office, and it's just I think he brought a lot of character to Perry White. He's the most memorable version of Perry White, and I enjoy the actor himself. So to see him be in every episode and be the mentor, Perry White, and he did a really good job of him being a mentor, as well as learning from his employees, learning from the people under him, from Lois and Clark and even Jimmy.
And I agree completely. I think this is my favorite version of Perry White. I could have done without all the Elvis love, but that's okay. I get that works, but it's okay. It works. But like you said,
for the 90s, for the 90s and for the character's age, I mean, that put him right in the time.
Right. It works for, this version. I think Perry can be a very difficult character, especially nowadays, because so many people, like, Perry was never like as bad as J. Jonah Jameson from Spider-Man, but he kind of can go into that territory. And a lot of people, nowadays are more versed with, J.K. Simmons' wonderful portrayal of J. Jonah Jameson in the Spider-Man films, that they're like, oh, Perry White's the same, but he's not. I think one thing that was always interesting about Perry is he always was a hard case on Lois, but also had a very soft spot for Lois.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's a little rougher on Clark, And I will say this is my favorite Perry White. So that kind of fills out the Daily Planet staff. We're going to move on to something that's really cool about this series is we get both of the kids. We have Ma and Pa, both alive, like they are in the comics. And I'll tell you what, I love Eddie and Kay. Like their portrayal, the way they interact with each other. I think as a couple, they're the best Jonathan and Martha Kent we've ever seen.
Oh, I agree. You know, they seem very wholesome. You know, they seem like they've been a couple who's been married for years and years and knows everything about one another, and their interactions are really good, and they play really good parents to Lois and Clark, or to Clark.
I'm recording with James. They do, and I believe them as a married couple. You know, we didn't get much. We got a little bit of Ma and Pa together in the old George series, in the Chris films. You know, Pa dies shortly, and that's an arc of that film. They are both present in the series, but I don't feel any chemistry from them. I don't feel any connection. And the only other time we really get to see them interact together is in Smallville, and I really like them in Smallville. I think they do a great job as individuals, but I think as far as the cohesive of the relationship, this is the best we've gotten.
Yeah, they were definitely like an older couple in this as well. Been through so many of the hard times, whereas, you know, in Smallville they had to be going through those hard times in the present. Gave a whole different dynamic.
And they feel like a family, them with Clark, the way they all three work together. I don't want to say too much about Clark yet. We're getting there. So we'll talk a little bit about now. Look, I mentioned earlier, this is John Shea as Lex Luthor. I think it's a really hard to say because Gene Hackman did a great job as Lex Luthor. But the Lex Luthor that Gene Hackman was representing isn't the same character that we all know now. You know, because you had that John Byrne reboot and Lex changed and became a different character. And that's something that is kind of hard because, you know, you grow up and you're like, oh, Lex Luthor's this. And then you go back and watch Superman the movie and you're like, oh, this doesn't feel like Lex. Well, it is, but it's not the version you thought it was going to be. So the version that we're all used to, the businessman, the billionaire, the pseudo could-be politician, this is his first introduction in live action.
John Shea does a wonderful job as Lex Luthor. I mean, television Lex Luthor, he's number 2, right behind Rosenbaum.
Yes. I mean, Lex Luthor.
Although I would have to say, period. Yeah. I would have to say that when it comes to like his intelligence and some of like the things he does, the tests he performs, the experiments and things, he might even have that up a little bit on Rosenbaum's, because Rosenbaum he kept his hands clean the majority of the time.
Yeah, I mean,
it was really behind the scenes, and you know, he always had somebody else doing the work for him.
And you know, that kind of plays into the fact that we also on Smallville had Lionel building into Lex, and you know, Lex was an intelligent man, but he wasn't always the scientist of the thing. And that's that Shay is Lex a little bit more of the scientist as well. And so that brings us down to our main two characters, Terry Hatcher as Lois Lane. I'll let you go first on this one.
Well, her interaction, or her introduction, rather, is pretty good. I mean, they introduce her, and the first time you see her, she's in disguise, looking like a hobo with a beard, or with a beard and a mustache, and cracking a big story. Terry Hatcher is pretty iconic in the role.
She is my number 2 favorite Lois Lane. And it's very, very close between her and Erica Durance. Okay, buddy. Sorry, pal. Superboy Solo's over here with us. But, yeah, she knows how to be strong and serious, but yet can be vulnerable at times and makes her feel human. She makes herself tough, but not, you don't hate her. And you believe her. Like Kate Bosworth in Superman Returns, I never believed her as the character. She was just annoying, and part of me almost wished she would have drowned. That's horrible to say, but she didn't feel like the character. Terry Hatcher feels like Lois Lane. More so than like...
Yes, she does.
Erica Durance is my favorite, but Terry is so close that I don't know. If I watch both series back to back, maybe I'll flip. I don't know, but she just nailed it. I mean...
Oh, yeah, she nailed it. She's very strong, but she can be very vulnerable. She's an investigative reporter through and through. Most of the time, she goes for the story without a second thought of what's going to happen, whether physical or But she's always going for the truth and wanting to expose people who are doing wrong and everything like that. So it's very, she nailed the character.
Bad.
And that leads us to the main man himself, Dean Cain. Dean Cain is not an actor that I would look at and say, there's Superman. He has a little bit of a different look than what you... And I'm sitting here, okay, so everyone knows, in my cave of solitude, and the picture that's hanging right above my middle monitor is Dean Cain flying as Superman. To the right is Christopher Reeve. Below him is Kirk Allen. And to the left of him is George Reeves. So that everyone has an idea of what I'm staring at. So when I say, Dean Cain has a different look, one thing that was noticeable with his Superman was they did a complete slick back of the hair. They didn't do the curl. But he has there's a charm and an honest lovability about him when he's Clark that really makes his character stand out.
Yeah, he's very good, and you can see that in the pilot here, where farther down in the pilot when some police officers are cracking jokes, and he's very serious in the fact that somebody died, that and they deserve the respect. They deserve to be respected, no matter their lot
and
in life.
With his Clark, being after the John Byrne reboot in the comics where Clark was given more of a character. It was a little bit of a different version, and I personally always kind of go back and forth because I love his Clark. And I always kind of go back on how much Clark should be off-putting. Like, should Clark be kind of charming? Should Clark stand out? Or should he blend in more? People always argue who's the real identity, Superman or Clark. I always kind of fall in the middle with I think, there's the Clark Kent that he presents to the world. That's a little bit of an act. And then Superman is an act, to a point, and the real person's in the middle. It's like he becomes these two characters, to be able to exist. And with Dean Cain's Clark, I think it falls more in the lines of, excuse me. I think it falls more in the lines of the kind of Clark that George Reeves did, as well as I think in a little bit more in lines with the little bit of Clark Kent that we saw from Tyler Hoechlin in Supergirl, where you like Clark. He is a little goofy, straight-edged, kind of Boy Scoutish, but Clark still has his own character. And I think that's something that's unique to this series because, Chris's portrayal of Clark is so much more of the bumbling goofball that we all think of, that is the extreme version of the act of Clark, that it's very hard to shake and create the little bit more serious Clark.
Dean Cain was the first, sure, I saw some Christopher Reeve when I was a little bit younger. Obviously, I saw at the time plenty of Superman 3 and Superman 4 on television.
Yep, I'm telling you. I swear, I think 4, there's one station that was just Superman 4, the TV station. Because
Right.
I always felt like it was on when I was at my grandparents' house. And the only reason I ever knew that Superboy, the show, existed, was I remember seeing one episode at my grandparents' house. And I just remember a shot. And I just remembered it for the longest time. Excuse me. For the longest time, I remembered that show existed. And I was like, I don't know what, but I remember this. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I remember seeing the films, but I didn't have them. Like, my parents didn't have them on VHS or anything like that. And I think we had them taped from TV, Superman 1 and 2. But I'm not sure if it was both or Superman 2 because, as I got older and I watched both of them again, I realized where certain parts were the other film. But in my child mind, I kind of blended them both as one movie. Because I always remember him fighting Zod in all of them. And because of the beginning of Superman, the movie where we meet Zod, in my mind, I just blended them as one film. So,
all right.
So my live action Superman was Dean Cain. Like, that was my continual live action Superman. I saw the TV, like the magazine covers, weekly show. There he was.
Oh yeah. Well, from the time Lois and Clark started until the time Smallville started. I mean, they played the 4. They televised the 4 seasons, and then it ran on syndication. I remember getting up early for I don't even know how long. I know around the time when I was in late high school, and probably for at least a year afterwards, I would get up early almost every single day to watch Lois and Clark on TNT because it was on at like 6, 7 in the morning.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Okay, I'm not the only one that remembers that. I remember it too. And I was telling Jania last night, like in 2006, when Superman Returns came out, I remember getting off work one night and I worked till like 11:30. So it was like 11:30, 12, and I stopped at Walmart to grab some stuff before I went home. And they had a huge display of Superman movies. And they had the DVDs of Superman 1 through 4 for $5 a piece. And I picked up Superman 1, I picked up Superman 2. And then they had the first season of Lois and Clark, the first season of Superboy, and then the old serials and some of the old George episodes. And I remember I bought season 1 of Lois and Clark because that was the only DVD set you could find of that show. Like, they released all 4 seasons. Years later, I found season 3, and then eventually I had to buy the other 2 seasons on eBay. I mean, not eBay, on Amazon, because I couldn't find them in stores. But it just like you could find season 1 so easily. And it was just, I remember I came home and it was like 12, but I was like so excited. Cause, you know, for any of the listeners out there, we didn't have streaming services. We didn't have on demand. We didn't have DVR. That's how dark this time was. Maybe DVR was coming around. I don't remember because I was at college and back and forth at my parents' house. But, you know, if I wanted to watch something, I bought the DVDs of it, and it was just so exciting. So I came home and I remember popping in Superman the movie. I think I got like an hour into it before I passed out.
Yeah, I mean, we sometime there in high school, either junior or senior year, we basically started going without cable and bought everything. Everything I had, I bought on DVD. And I still have a number of them. And one of them is Lois and Clark season 1.
Yep. So that's kind of like our memory and our kind of quick analyzing. We're going to just kind of talk a little bit about the pilot as the story. Because I really encourage everybody out there who's listening to kind of revisit the show. Watch that pilot. You know, if nothing else, like I said, it's like a made for TV Superman movie, and it's great. It holds up well, even with some of the fashion, even with the effects. It's still a good time to watch. I do know that Lois and Clark will be premiering on the DC streaming service, the DC Universe, which is dropping on the 15th. So there you go. You'll be able to watch Lois and Clark and enjoy that pilot episode. If nothing, I mean, check out the show. It's great that we have this different Supermans of different time. Like, while this show was going on in 1996, Superman the Animated Series premiered. And I remember that was so awesome because I had my Superman cartoon and my Superman TV series for a year. But it was just a good time. So the pilot episode, you know, it is Clark coming to Metropolis, and we get to see that the one thing, this is kind of my scattered brain, is looking back that doesn't quite make sense is why he wears glasses. You know, Clark shows up, he has his glasses, he has an interview with the Daily Planet, but Perry turns him away. He hears about a story that Perry assigned Lois, but Lois didn't want to take it. He takes the initiative. He does the story. It's a beautiful scene of they're tearing an old theater, and Clark, you know, delays it by using his heat vision on the equipment. And he writes the story, and it's, you know, we hear him writing it. We see him typing. And if I remember my comic books accurately, he was hired as a typist, because one of his things, he was the fastest, because there's a line in Superman, the movie, where Perry says, if he isn't the fastest typist that I've ever seen.
Right. Well, in the pilot, you know, he's typing so fast that his keyboard on his computer starts smoking.
Yes, we do have computers. That is nice. I mean, there's a lot of really cool jokes throughout the series, if you think about it, where it is the very early age of the internet and computers, email, And you're just kind of like, oh, yeah, there was a time before that. So it is really interesting to see that time frame. And basically, there's a space station being launched, and Clark, gets paired up with Lois. They start investigating it. And as the show goes on, Clark does Superman things, but he realizes he needs a costume. He needs something that he can help people, but still maintain being Clark. So once again, that shifts more about the personality and who this character really is, that Clark is the character and Superman is just something he does. It's him, a part of him. And that works for this. I've already explained my thoughts and ideas about it, but like I said, I thought it was odd that he wore the glasses already, and I always liked the idea that glasses were added later as part of the disguise.
Yeah, I mean, that's an idea. I never really thought of why is he wearing glasses already? Except for, as the pilot goes on, we discover that he's traveled the world. He's gone all over, educating himself about different places and different peoples. And this Clark is incredibly intelligent, very worldly, and he I almost lost my train of thought there.
It's easy to deal late at night.
It is.
But it's something I really like. I mean, no one's, as far as live action goes, with Superman, Smallville excluded because it's different, but the idea of kind of being with Clark as he traveled the world and experienced things and built up that identity. And
okay, that was kind of my where I was going with it. He travels the world. He's obviously done things and he's saved people. The first scene that he shows when he gets off the bus with his CK with his initials on his briefcase is he stops a bus that goes out of control because the driver has a heart attack. And he's spotted. Somebody sees him doing what he does. It could have been at some point he just adopted the glasses to be like, okay, take them off, save somebody, and throw the glasses back on. Not exactly the first person they're going to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps that could be something, but
can I just say that there's a lot of scenes that if you watch carefully, you can kind of tell how things were filmed, because there's scenes where Dean Cain's hair is a little longer. I don't want to use the word mullet-esque, but it has more of an 80s flair to it. And then there's scenes where it's cut nice. And there's scenes where it'll cut to the shot and his hair is a little longer, then it'll cut back to the other person in the shot and then cut back and his hair's short again. And I was like, I pointed out to Janie, I was like, see, watch this. Just like, what's interesting, there's a scene where Martha is making Clark his costumes, which is funny. It's a little cheesy, but it's funny. And when eventually he gets the Superman costume and she pulls out the S, they said that was in there with him, the shield crest, and she puts it on there, and it works perfectly. And, if you look at his boots, they're red, but they're like red lace boots, kind of like what you'd see like in professional wrestling. He comes walking out and his dad sees him, and then he takes off to go help the space shuttle, and it's to like the regular boots that he would wear throughout the series. Little stuff you pick up that, and sometimes when pilots are made, they shoot, and then they do reshoots more extensively because they're trying to make the best product possible. Things change in production. And like I said, I have a feeling that maybe this would have been done as a TV movie had it not been picked up as a series. And they want to make the best they possibly can.
Right. You know, the flight effects that they used in this, you know, the scene early on when he's laying in bed in his hotel room and the light is flashing, you know, it doesn't look too shabby of him just basically floating. Like he's laying down and he floats all the way up to the ceiling, taps the light and everything, and floats back down to the floor or back down into bed.
Exactly. The one of the final shots of the film or episode is he flies Lois into the Daily Planet headquarters. And that's one of the scenes with the longer hair. But it looks so good and smooth of him coming through those windows, holding Lois and putting her down, that it holds up. And then the effect of where he's talking with Lex at the very end, where he basically is like confronting Lex, like, I know that you had involvement there. I can't prove it. And he makes a statement back to Lex, because earlier Lex said he loved being in Luthor Tower, or Lex Tower. And it was the highest point in Metropolis, and everyone had to look up to see him. And Superman walks out and like glides up and says, if you want me, all you have to do is look up. And he takes off. And that looks great. I mean, it holds up beautifully. The scene that was used in the opening credits of Clark in his regular clothes flying where he's heading back to Kansas looks great. The scene where Clark grabs
which Lois, I like,
and he's running out from a bomb, but he kind of like takes off and flies with the explosion. Looks great.
Mm-hmm. I like I like that scene where he flies back home to Kansas for dinner and stuff, and his mom fixes his clothes because his clothes get damaged in a lightning storm on the flight there.
He mentions a electrical storm over Cleveland.
Oh yes, he does. I didn't catch that where he says about it being Cleveland.
I was like, that's really cool. Just a slight nod, kind of like, oh, people laugh like, oh, Cleveland, Ohio, but they don't, not everybody, not everyone's going to think, that it's, the birthplace of Superman.
Right. Hey, I didn't even catch that rewatching it.
I'm always on the lookout for Ohio. Got to represent.
Right. So yeah, the effects for this in the early 90s, being a television show, yeah, they were really good.
It was money well spent.
It was.
So what would you rate this episode on a 10 scale?
As to rate this episode as a pilot episode, as a single episode trying without the show and everything, I would probably give it a 9.5.
Dang, you read my mind.
Dean Cain does an excellent job as Clark Kent and becoming Superman. Terry Hatcher nails it as Lois Lane. She's headstrong and she doesn't look at the consequences until they're already in her lap. Perry White. I mean, an iconic version of Perry White. The only actor who got to play Perry White that long, and really got to leave his mark on the character. Some of it is so 90s, and 90s wasn't a bad time.
No, it wasn't.
But very good. I enjoy it from beginning to end. It's a very good story on Clark Kent becoming Superman. The scene where his mom is making to the traditional Superman costume. It's a very strong episode.
You need that montage, costume montage. I mean, they did a cool costume montage in Supergirl, and it was cool because you kind of had an idea of what kind of costume where she was going with it, because of her cousin. But yeah, I would 9.5. It's great. Watch it, enjoy it, and you have 4 seasons to enjoy the show and watch their chemistry grow. And
it's got and the pilot episode it's not just, the character introductions. There is a full plot line that runs through it with the space station Prometheus, with the messenger exploding on takeoff, the scientist who was murdered, Lex, being behind everything, but no way to prove it. His hands are clean in the matter. Lex becoming the savior of the space program,
it's
profiting off of it. Yeah, it is. It really is. It's definitely a first movie out the gate.
Look up in the sky.
Look up in the sky.
Look up in the sky. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Krypton Report. You can also email us at kryptonreportpod@gmail.com. If you get a chance to go over to iTunes, please leave us a review to help us get better. If you're an Amazon shopper, just remember you can go to southgatemediagroup.com. There's a portal, log into Amazon, and you'll shop into your account just regular, but it also helps keep all the podcasts on and helps keep Southgate running. Remember, look up in the sky.